My wife inherited a house from her ex, and together with her stepdaughter, they decided to leave me and move into the new house. It's funny how life can shift so suddenly. One moment, you're going through the motions, living out the routine you've built for yourself, and the next, everything gets flipped upside down. My life wasn't always complicated. There wasn't always this weight of uncertainty hanging over every decision, but it wasn't always easy either. I guess it all started with her, the woman who changed everything, but not in the way you'd expect. Before I met Olivia, I was married once. It feels like a lifetime ago now, but the scars from that relationship still run deep. Her name was Karen, and we were together for 7 years. 7 long, difficult years that slowly drained the life out of me. Looking back, I realize I never should have married her. We were mismatched from the start, but I was young and stupid, thinking I could fix things, thinking love could be forced if I just tried hard enough. It was a disaster. Karen had a darkness in her, a coldness that I couldn't understand. She was never happy, no matter what I did. I'd bend over backward to make her smile, to make her see that life didn't have to be this bleak, but nothing worked. The worst part wasn't even the fights or the way she'd shut me out for days at a time. It was the betrayal, the moment I realized just how much of a fool I'd been. There was another man. Of course there was. And not just one. By the end of it, I found out she had been cheating on me for years, stringing me along while she lived this double life that I never saw coming. It wasn't just the infidelity that destroyed me. It was the deceit, the way she looked me in the eyes every day while hiding so much. When I finally confronted her, she didn't even try to deny it. She didn't apologize. She just walked away, as if our entire marriage meant nothing to her. Maybe it didn't. I was broken after that. There's no other way to put it. When someone you've dedicated years of your life to betrays you like that, it changes you. I couldn't trust anyone after that, not fully. I told myself I wouldn't let anyone in again, wouldn't let myself be that vulnerable ever again. For a long time, I stuck to that. I kept my distance, built walls around myself that I was sure no one could break through. Then Olivia came along. At first, I didn't want anything to do with her. She was warm, caring, everything Karen wasn't. But that's exactly why she scared me. I was terrified of letting someone in again, terrified of being hurt like that a second time. But Olivia was persistent. She broke through my defenses slowly, bit by bit, until I found myself falling for her. And for a while, it was good. Really good. She made me believe in love again. Made me think that maybe, just maybe, I could have the kind of life I'd always wanted. But here's the thing about life. It doesn't care about your plans. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, something comes along to remind you that control is an illusion. That's how I ended up here, in the middle of this mess with Olivia and Sophia, questioning everything all over again. Maybe it's my own fault. Maybe I never really healed from what happened with Karen. Maybe that betrayal left deeper wounds than I realized, and now, every time Olivia does something that feels even remotely like abandonment, it drags me back to that place, that raw, painful place where I can't think clearly, where I can't trust. I love Olivia, I do, but I can't help wondering if I'm just setting myself up to be hurt again. It's not that she's done anything like what Karen did. Olivia is loyal. She's not the kind of person to cheat or lie. But this thing with the house in Brenton, with her wanting to move back to be closer to her family, it feels like history repeating itself. She's slipping away from me, choosing something else over the life we've built, and I can't shake the feeling that I'm losing her. I know I'm not the easiest person to be with. I carry a lot of baggage, and maybe that's why Olivia's pulling away. Maybe I've pushed her too far, expected too much, but part of me can't help but think that if she really loved me, she wouldn't be putting me in this position. She wouldn't be asking me to leave everything behind for her. She wouldn't be willing to walk away so easily. It's that feeling of betrayal creeping back in, that doubt, that fear that no matter how hard I try, I'm always going to end up alone. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't just break your heart. It breaks something deeper. It shatters the way you see the world, the way you see people, even the ones you love. So now, here I am, trying to figure out if I can make this work with Olivia or if I'm just destined to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. I want to believe that things can be different this time. I want to believe that we can find a way through this, that I can trust her, that she won't leave me like Karen did. But I don't know. I don't know if I can. And that scares me more than anything. Because if I can't trust the one person I thought I could count on, what does that say about me? About the way I've lived my life? Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I always have been. It's been a weird couple of years for me. You know when you get married and think you've figured out what your life is going to be like? Well, that's where I was 2 years ago when I married Olivia. She's 39, a bit younger than me, but still, I thought we had a pretty good thing going. She had a teenage daughter, Sophia, from her previous marriage, and things with them were complicated, but manageable. We'd been living together for 3 years by that point, and I was trying to be the best stepfather I could for Sophia, who's 15 now. But let's be real, being a stepdad isn't the same as having your own kid. It's tricky, and every decision feels like walking on eggshells. Olivia had been raising Sophia on her own for the last 11 years after her divorce, so she was pretty protective, and Sophia, well, she was a teenager, full of rebellion and hormones, caught between loyalty to her dad and dealing with the fact that I was now in the picture. Olivia's ex-husband, James, was this ambitious, workaholic type. He didn't make time for them, which, of course, is part of why their marriage fell apart. After the divorce, he was still around for a while, seeing Sophia on weekends, but he just wasn't consistent. You could tell the relationship between him and Sophia wasn't great, especially after Olivia and I got married. It's like his visits became even fewer after that, and when he did show up, there was tension. But everything took a huge turn last year. James passed away. I didn't know the guy well, but still, it was one of those unexpected shocks. I thought maybe this would bring some closure for Olivia and Sophia, maybe let them move forward. But no, life isn't that simple, is it? Turns out, James had a house in this small town Olivia grew up in, this place called Didnt, a good 5-hour drive away. The house wasn't just any random property. It was the house Olivia and James had lived in when they were married. Yeah, that house. And the kicker? He left it to Sophia. She's 15 years old, and now she owns a house. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured they'd sell the place, split whatever money came from it, and we'd carry on. But Olivia started talking about moving back to Didnt. She kept saying how it was an opportunity for Sophia to be closer to her roots, whatever that meant, and how it'd be good for them both to live in a more peaceful place. She talked about the memories, about how Sophia could have her own space, her own independence. I wasn't so sure. Actually, I was completely against it. Here's the thing. My life is here, in Clayton. I run my own small business, and everything I've built, all my connections, are tied to this city. I can't just pack up and move. Besides, the idea of them going to live in the same house where Olivia had lived with her ex-husband? It didn't sit right with me. The whole thing just felt wrong, like I was being pushed out of their lives. Olivia, though? She wouldn't let it go. I didn't think it would come to this, but after months of back and forth, they decided to just go. It wasn't like they were leaving for good, or so they said. We'll just try it for a while, Olivia told me. See how it feels. They took off, just like that, for Didnt, to live in that damn house, and I stayed behind. I thought I could handle it. I told myself it was temporary, that they'd come back after a few days, a week at most. Once they realized life there wasn't as rosy as they remembered. But as the days stretched on, I started feeling more and more abandoned. They'd been gone for nearly 2 weeks now, and in that time, I'd barely heard from them. No calls, just a couple of texts that felt more like checking off a box than real communication. It hit me hard, harder than I expected. I felt like they didn't even need me. Olivia and I used to talk about everything, but now, silence. And Sophia? Forget it. She didn't even acknowledge my existence half the time when we were under the same roof, let alone now that she was miles away. The whole situation had me spiraling. What was I even doing here? Was this what my life was going to be? Sitting alone in a house, waiting for them to decide if they wanted to come back or not. It was brutal. I couldn't sleep. I'd just sit up at night thinking about all the things I should have said, the arguments I should have made. I kept replaying it in my head, every moment when I could have fought harder to keep them here. But then I'd catch myself. Was I being selfish? Was I holding them back from something that would make them happy? But it wasn't just that. It wasn't just the distance or the silence. It was the house. That house was the ghost of Olivia's old life. A life with her ex-husband. How was I supposed to be okay with them going back to that place? How was I supposed to feel like part of their future if they were living in the past? Everything I'd built with Olivia felt like it was slipping away, and the more I thought about it, the more bitter I became. I'd supported her through so much, been there for Sophia, even when it was tough, and now they were off building a new life without me. I knew things weren't perfect between us, but I didn't expect to feel this disposable. I tried to focus on work, but that only distracted me for so long. Every time I checked my phone, hoping for a message, I'd get nothing. Maybe a short text from Olivia now and then, but nothing substantial. No real conversations. I was getting frustrated, angry, even. And when the anger would subside, I'd just feel hollow. Like, what was the point of it all? If they were going to go off and live their lives, why was I even here? I found myself staring at the phone, wanting to call her, to say something. But what would I even say? Would it make any difference? I was stuck in this cycle of second-guessing, too hurt to reach out, too confused to figure out where we stood. So I just let the silence stretch on. And now, sitting here alone, it feels like everything's changed. I don't know if they're coming back. I don't know if they want to. After Olivia and Sophia left, I couldn't shake this feeling that things were over. Really over. It's strange how quickly your mind can shift from trying to make things work to just wanting to be free of the mess. Maybe it was the silence, the total lack of communication, or maybe it was me just growing tired of feeling like the outsider in my own life. Whatever it was, the thought of divorce kept creeping into my head, louder each day. At first, I tried to ignore it. I thought maybe I was just overreacting, caught up in the moment, feeling abandoned while they were off playing house in Brenton. But the longer they stayed away, the more it felt like a betrayal. How could they just go without talking to me about it? How could they think it was okay to leave me behind while they chased some romanticized idea of the past? I couldn't get over it. The house, Olivia's history with James, all of it was just too much. It felt like I was competing with a ghost, and I was losing. Eventually, I decided I needed to talk to someone, and that's when I contacted my lawyer. It wasn't that I was dead set on ending things right then and there, but I wanted to know my options. I felt like if I didn't start figuring things out now, I'd be left in the dust, and they'd move on without me. Divorce felt like the only way out. My lawyer listened to everything. The whole story of Olivia and Sophia moving to Brenton, the silence, the tension, and how I'd been feeling like I was on the outside of their lives. To my surprise, the lawyer didn't jump straight to paperwork. Instead, he told me I should talk to Olivia first, have a real conversation about where things were headed before making any drastic decisions. It wasn't what I expected, and it kind of threw me off. Here I was, ready to start untangling my life from hers, and now I was being told to try one more time to work things out? But maybe he had a point. Maybe I did need to have that conversation, painful as it might be. Just a couple of days after that meeting, Olivia and Sophia came back. I wasn't expecting them. So when they walked through the door, it threw me. I thought maybe they'd come to talk, to finally acknowledge how all of this had affected me, how their leaving had left me feeling abandoned and unwanted. But no. Instead, the first thing out of Olivia's mouth was all about the house. Apparently, it was in terrible shape. They hadn't been able to move in like they planned because it needed serious repairs. Repairs they hadn't even considered before running off to Brenton. They had been staying with Olivia's parents for the past week, and from the sound of it, the whole plan to move had been postponed indefinitely. Sophia, unsurprisingly, was hardly fazed. She had her phone out the whole time, barely acknowledging me or the situation. I waited, expecting, no, hoping, for an apology, something to show that Olivia had realized how messed up the whole situation was. But all she talked about was how difficult it had been dealing with the house and her parents. Not a word about me. Not one damn word about how I'd been feeling, or what they had put me through these last few weeks. No apology for leaving me in the dark, no recognition of how their decision had affected my life. It was like I didn't even matter. I stood there, seething, waiting for something, anything, but it never came. And that's when I snapped. I told Olivia I didn't want to live like this anymore, that I was tired of feeling like an afterthought in her life. I told her I couldn't do it, the indifference, the way she'd left me behind without a second thought, as if my life, my feelings, didn't matter. I told her I didn't want to live with her anymore if this was how things were going to be. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. It's like she couldn't even comprehend why I was upset. She fired back, calling me selfish, saying that I never supported her desire to be closer to her family, that I was making this all about me. She said I was overreacting, that I was blowing this whole thing out of proportion and being dramatic about wanting a divorce over nothing. She couldn't understand how much this had hurt me. To her, it was just a hiccup, a small bump in the road. But to me, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. The fight escalated fast. Before I knew it, we were screaming at each other. Every unresolved issue from the past 2 years bubbling up to the surface. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about everything. The way she'd always put Sophia and her own needs first. The way I'd never felt truly part of their family. The way every time there was a decision to be made, I always came second. It all spilled out, raw and ugly. After what felt like hours of fighting, Olivia packed her things. She didn't say much as she grabbed a few bags, but it was clear she was leaving. Sophia followed her out the door without a word, and just like that, they were gone again. Only this time, I wasn't sure if they'd be coming back. The house felt emptier than ever. I'd thought maybe having them back, even for a short time, would help clear the air, but now it felt worse. The silence was deafening. I kept running the fight over and over in my head, replaying every word, every accusation. Had I gone too far? Was I wrong to feel this way? The anger that had fueled me during the fight was starting to fade, and all I was left with was doubt and confusion. 2 days passed, and I didn't reach out to them. I couldn't. I didn't know what to say, didn't know if I wanted them back, or if this was the start of something permanent. I knew Olivia and Sophia were staying with a friend, but that was about it. No texts, no calls, just more silence. The kind that gnaws at you, makes you second-guess everything. I'd thought talking to Olivia would help clear things up, but instead, it left me even more confused. Was I really ready for this to be the end? Could I handle the fallout of a divorce, of cutting ties with the life I'd built over the last few years? Or was I just being stubborn, refusing to admit that maybe I was part of the problem? All I knew for sure was that things couldn't go on like this. Something had to give, but for the life of me, I didn't know what to do next. It's been a week since Olivia and Sophia left after the fight, and the silence has been unbearable. I've had nothing but time to think, and the more I do, the worse I feel. I can't shake the thought that if that house in Brenton had been in decent shape, they never would have come back. It's like I'm their second choice, the fallback plan. The reality of it hits me harder than I expected. I always knew Olivia had strong ties to her past, to that house, to her family, but I guess I never really accepted how much those things meant to her until now. It's one thing to feel like you're not someone's top priority. It's another to realize you might just be the backup plan all along. There's something deeply unsettling about that. I keep playing it over in my head. If that house hadn't been falling apart, if things had gone smoothly like she wanted, would she have even thought twice about leaving me behind? I doubt it. And that's the part that eats away at me. It's not that they came back because they missed me or realized the mistake they'd made. It's because their plan didn't work out. I was the backup, the contingency. I don't blame Sophia. She's just a kid, caught up in all of this because of her parents' decisions, and she never really asked for any of it. Her attitude hasn't exactly helped, but she's still a teenager dealing with the loss of her dad and all the changes in her life. I can't hold a grudge against her for that. But Olivia? That's different. I can't shake the feeling that she's trying to put the responsibility for this whole situation on me. Like somehow, by not supporting her decision to move to Brenton, I'm the one who's at fault. I keep hearing her words from that fight, calling me selfish and cowardly. They've been stuck in my head ever since, gnawing at me. Was I selfish? Was it really too much to ask for her to take my feelings into account? I never wanted to stand in the way of her being close to her family, but I didn't expect to be left behind either. And now, the more I think about it, the more I wonder if Olivia even sees me as part of her future. Or was I just some temporary fixture, convenient for a while but easily discarded when her past came calling? A week passes with no word from either of them. I start to think maybe this is it. Maybe they're not coming back. But then, out of nowhere, Olivia shows up with Sophia and a couple of friends. She's got a truck. and they start loading up the house. At first, I don't even know how to react. I'd thought maybe she was coming back to talk, to work things out. But no, she's here to pack up and leave, and it hits me like a punch to the gut. I watch as they move boxes and bags, Olivia directing the whole thing like it's no big deal. Like this isn't the life we've built together being packed up in front of my eyes. She doesn't even look at me at first, too busy with the logistics of the move, and it's like I'm invisible in my own home. That's when it really sinks in. She's serious about this. This isn't just about the house anymore. Eventually, Olivia pulls me aside. She tells me that her decision isn't just about the condition of the house. She wants to move back to Didnt to be closer to her family and friends. She says this isn't some impulsive choice, but something she's been thinking about for a long time, even before James died. It's something she's ready for, something she's needed for a while now. And I realize, as she's talking, that this has always been about more than the house. This is about her wanting to go back to her roots, to a place where she feels connected to something bigger than just us. I don't know what to say. I feel blindsided, even though I shouldn't. I guess I'd been in denial about how serious she was. Maybe I'd convinced myself that this was just a rough patch, that she'd come to her senses and we'd work things out. But now it's clear. She's already made up her mind. She's leaving. And she's giving me an ultimatum without actually saying the words. She asks if I'll move with her. And for a moment, I just stand there, completely frozen. How do I even begin to answer that? My whole life is here. My business is here. Everything I've worked for, everything I've built, it's all tied to this place. But Olivia is standing there, waiting for an answer, and I don't have one. I can't just up and leave everything behind. But I also can't bring myself to tell her no, not yet. So I ask for time. I need to think about it, to really figure out what I'm willing to do for this marriage. Olivia gives me that time, but she makes it clear that I need to make a decision soon. She's not going to wait forever, and I know she means it. She's already got one foot out the door. Now, I'm stuck in this weird limbo. Every day that passes feels heavier, like the weight of the decision is pressing down on me, and I don't know how much longer I can stand it. Part of me feels like I should just go, follow her to Didnt and try to make it work, even if it means giving up everything I've built here. But then another part of me screams that this isn't right, that I shouldn't have to sacrifice my entire life just to hold on to something that already feels broken. I've been thinking a lot about what marriage is supposed to mean. Is it about compromise? About sacrifice? Or is it supposed to be about building something together? A life that works for both people? Because right now, it feels like I'm the only one being asked to give anything up. Olivia wants to go back to her family, her old life, and she's asking me to follow her. But what am I getting in return? What happens to my dreams, my goals, the life I've built? It feels like she's already made her decision, and now it's just up to me to decide whether I want to follow her or be left behind. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that maybe this was always the plan. Maybe Olivia's been drifting back toward Didnt for a long time now, and I was just too caught up in my own life to see it. She's been talking about her family more and more over the past year, about how much she misses them, how much she misses that small-town life. I guess I just didn't want to believe that she'd actually go through with it. I still don't know what to do. Every time I think I'm ready to make a decision, I second-guess myself. What if I do go with her and end up resenting her for making me leave everything behind? What if I stay here and we drift apart completely? It feels like there's no right answer. I keep trying to tell myself that I just need more time to think, but deep down, I know that time is running out. Olivia's not going to wait forever. And honestly, I don't even know if I want her to. Because if this is how things are going to be, me always playing catch-up, always feeling like I'm second to her past, then maybe it's time to let go. Maybe this marriage isn't what I thought it was. Maybe it never was. Now, I'm just waiting. Waiting for something to click, for some clarity to come. But it's not happening. Every day feels like a struggle, and I'm no closer to making a decision than I was a week ago. All I know is that something has to change, one way or another, because I can't keep living in this state of limbo, with one foot in the life I've built and the other in a future I'm not even sure I want. It took me 3 weeks to finally make my decision. 3 long, agonizing weeks of going back and forth, trying to figure out what I really wanted, what was possible, and what I was willing to give up. The longer I thought about it, the clearer it became that moving to Didnt just wasn't something I could do. My life, my work, everything that I had built was here. This city was my home, and no matter how much I cared about Olivia and Sophia, I couldn't just uproot everything and leave it behind. It wasn't an easy conclusion to come to, but deep down, I knew it was the right one. I couldn't pretend that things were fine or that I could make it work if I wasn't fully committed to leaving my entire life behind. And if I wasn't willing to make that sacrifice, what was left for us? A marriage built on compromise, sure, but at what cost? I couldn't expect Olivia to abandon her dreams of being closer to her family just because I couldn't go with her. It wasn't fair to either of us. So, after 3 weeks of sleepless nights and endless self-reflection, I decided it was time to end things. Divorce wasn't what I wanted, but it felt like the only realistic option. I didn't want to keep dragging this out, making both of us miserable with uncertainty. The life Olivia wanted for herself was in Didnt, and mine was here. We were on different paths, and it was time to face that truth. When I finally sat down to talk to Olivia, it was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. I expected her to be angry, maybe even hurt, but she wasn't. She just listened, her face a mix of sadness and understanding. I told her I couldn't move, that my life was here, and that I didn't want to hold her back from what she needed. She nodded, taking it all in quietly, and when she spoke, there was no resentment in her voice, just a kind of resignation. She told me she understood, that she had always known this would be a difficult decision for me, and that part of her had already started preparing for the possibility that we might not be able to make it work. She explained again, gently this time, that being close to her family wasn't just about nostalgia or reliving the past. It was about needing support, a connection to something familiar, something that had been missing in her life since we moved in together. She didn't blame me for not wanting to leave my life behind, but she also couldn't let go of her need to be near the people she loved. It was a surprisingly calm conversation. No accusations, no yelling, just two people who had once built a life together realizing they wanted different things now. I thought I'd feel a sense of finality when we made the decision to divorce, but instead, I just felt hollow, like the weight of the decision hadn't really hit me yet. The hardest part, though, was talking about Sophia. Over the past few years, I'd grown attached to her. Sure, we had our ups and downs, but I cared about her like she was my own daughter. The thought of losing her, of not being a part of her life, was unbearable. So, when Olivia and I started discussing custody arrangements, I made it clear that I wanted to stay involved in Sophia's life. I didn't want to just disappear from her world. Olivia agreed. She could see how much I cared for Sophia, and she promised that we'd figure out a way for me to remain part of her life, even if we weren't together anymore. That was a relief, but it still left me feeling uncertain about the future. What would things be like? Really? Would Sophia still see me as her stepdad? Or would I just fade into the background of her life as time went on? It wasn't something I could control, but at least I knew Olivia was willing to work with me on it. A few days after our initial conversation, we all met up, me, Olivia, and Sophia. I wasn't sure what to expect, but it was one of the most emotionally charged moments I'd ever experienced. Seeing them again, sitting together and talking about the future, it was overwhelming. I had been so focused on the practicalities of divorce that I hadn't fully processed the emotional side of it. I hadn't realized how much I still loved Olivia, how much I still wanted to make things work, even though everything seemed to be pointing toward the end. There was this unspoken understanding between us during that meeting, like we both realized at the same time that we weren't ready to give up on each other. It was clear in the way we talked, the way we looked at each other. The love was still there, buried under all the hurt and frustration, but it was there. And it wasn't something either of us was ready to throw away just yet. By the end of the meeting, it became obvious that neither of us wanted to go through with the divorce. We had been through so much together, and it seemed crazy to just let it all go without at least trying to fix things. So, we made a decision right then and there. We were going to give it another shot, not just for the sake of Sophia, but for us. We weren't ready to walk away from this marriage. Not yet. We agreed to try marriage therapy, something we had never seriously considered before. I think we both realized that we needed help to figure things out, to find a way forward that worked for both of us. I wasn't sure how it would go, but I knew I was willing to put in the effort if Olivia was. I still loved her, and I wasn't ready to give up on us. There was also the issue of Olivia wanting to be closer to her family. That wasn't something I could just brush aside. It was a big part of why we had reached this breaking point, and if we were going to make this work, I knew I had to be more flexible about it. I wasn't ready to move to Brenton, but I promised Olivia that I would make an effort to spend more time with her family. Maybe that meant more visits, weekends in Brenton, finding ways to make her feel connected to her roots without completely uprooting my life here. It wasn't the perfect solution, but it was a start. We left that meeting with a sense of hope, something I hadn't felt in weeks. We still had a long way to go, and I knew things wouldn't magically get better overnight. But we were both committed to trying, and that felt like enough for now. In the days that followed, I felt a shift in myself. I had been so focused on what I couldn't do, like moving to Brenton, that I hadn't allowed myself to think about what I could do. Maybe I couldn't leave my life behind, but I could make changes, small ones at first, to show Olivia that I was willing to compromise, to meet her halfway. The first therapy session was awkward. We didn't know where to start, and the tension from weeks of arguments and misunderstandings still hung in the air. But by the end of it, we were talking, really talking, in a way we hadn't in a long time. I started to see things from Olivia's perspective, to understand why she felt the pull to go back to her family. And she started to see why I had been so resistant to the idea of leaving my life behind. Each session after that felt like progress. Slow, sometimes frustrating progress, but progress nonetheless. And little by little, we started to rebuild what had been broken. I don't know what the future holds for us, but for the first time in a while, I feel like we have a shot. We're both willing to do the work, to fight for this marriage, and that's more than I could have hoped for just a few weeks ago. Things won't be easy, and there will be more difficult conversations ahead, but for now, we're choosing to stay together. We're choosing to try, and that's something worth holding on to. If you like the story, don't hesitate to subscribe and listen to new stories every day. Write in the comments what you like the most.